and then just get started. Okay, so this is the meeting for reviewing upload progress monitoring, and just dive into it. So this is a design that I'd like to get into the 1.7 release. And the goal here is to start enabling us, so start having Velero track the progress of snapshot uploads that are happening in the background. And that will get us on the step. So currently we have several different plugins that do this, where they upload data in the background. And eventually we want to move the actual data movement up into Velero itself, where appropriate. And so in order to do that, we need to have this ability to monitor things. And so we'll get some incremental progress out of this right away, because we are able to do some things we can't do now. And then it'll enable us for some changes in the architecture as we're coming along. So let's see. So I think we're all relatively familiar with the existing plugin volume snapshotter architecture. So most of the snapshot plugin, volume snapshotter API goes ahead and we say take a snapshot, and then it returns back to Velero, and then Velero continues on to the next thing. And when all the snapshots have finished, and when all the Kubernetes metadata has been written into the object store, the backup's completed. But we have existing examples, for example, like with AWS EDS, you'll go ahead and you'll ask EBS to take a snapshot. It will return immediately, but the snapshot may not be usable until sometime in the future when it's actually persisted into S3. So there's a window there where your Velero backup can be completed, but if you go to do a restore, it'll actually fail because the snapshots aren't available. vSphere is similar because the plugin uploads data into S3 in the background. It will actually be usable right away because we can use the local snapshots. But if you were to have a storage catastrophe during that time, the Velero backup would show as completed, but it might still be uploading in the background. And then for Rustic currently doesn't use snapshotting, and it just blocks everything until it finishes. So we probably won't be able to push that into the background until we marry Rustic or Rustic-like things with snapshotting, but it'd be nice to be able to do that. And I mean, really our goal on the snapshotting side is to take them as close together as possible. So we don't want to slow anything down on the snapshot side. And we want to just move things along. Okay, so overall goals here. We really want to monitor the operations after the snapshotting operations have completed. So we say we've snapshotted, but then if there's something happening, we want to be able to keep track of this. We want to be able to say that if your backup isn't really persistent or it's not usable, it shouldn't appear as completed. And we want to not like change everything in the volume snapshots and so forth. At this point, we're not going through and unifying backup item actions and volume snapshotters. So there's two snapshot paths right now that do not go through volume snapshotter. That is the CSI snapshotting and the vSphere snapshotting, and these both appear as backup item actions. So we need to be able to handle backup item actions and volume snapshotters that can have ongoing things in the background. So we kind of have these two models, and one is that the snapshot does everything. The snapshot plugin does everything. And then where we want to go eventually is having this Velero controlled movement. So Velero actually says what to do. That's not going to happen actually right now, but that's where we're going eventually. So I made a little state diagram of what things would look like and where we go. So we always start off like as a new backup. Once the backup gets rolling, it's gonna, and it may stay new for a while until Velero actually starts executing the backup. Once it starts going, we'll go to in progress. And then if we get some kind of a massive failure here during the backup, we could go to failed, where the backup's simply over, or we can go to partially failed. And that is like some minor error, like we couldn't upload one object or something, or maybe one snapshot failed. And so right now we have two terminal states, or three terminal states: failed, partially failed, and completed, that we can go to from in progress. And I'm proposing that we're going to add two new states. So we're going to have an uploading state and uploading partial failure. And these, we may not go to those, and it's quite possible to go directly to the completed state. Actually, there's one path I didn't draw here, which I should, which is it's possible during the upload to go to uploading partial failure. So is everybody good with the state diagram here?
This makes sense, but the uploading partial failure, I'm not sure how useful that state will be, because unless we are able to tell like define clearly what partial failure means, I'm not sure how useful that will be, but we can keep it for now.
So the reason that uploading partial failure is there is that retains the state that at the end we're going to be partially failed. So right now we have two end states. We have partially failed and completed. So when we move, so if we didn't have, so I initially designed it without this. And if we just had uploading, we would have to keep the fact that the end result was going to be partially failed somewhere. And I didn't have a good somewhere.
Okay.
Because if I kept it in memory, then we couldn't, like if we restart for some reason, the uploads may be completely, fine at the end, but we wouldn't be able to mark it as partially failed. Or we could always mark it as partially failed because we crashed, but then that might not be true, because we may have done everything correctly, but the server simply was restarted during the middle.
Yeah.
So that's why that partial failure is there. But I'm open to suggestion.
Would it be useful to make uploading partial failure also a terminal state, so that we can just retry upload later on? The users, when they see uploading is partially failed, they may just retry the upload.
We could, but then we'd have to add in commands to actually restart the upload. So right now, I think we're going to do a little bit of surgery in here while we're working on this to handle our restart cases. Because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that if we restart, backups that are in progress will simply remain in progress.
Yeah, they'll be abandoned effectively.
Yeah.
They sit there in whatever state they were at last, and we don't update them.
Yeah. So as part of this, like anything that's in progress should, on restart, that should go directly to failed. And anything like the uploading and uploading partial failure, these may actually even be continuing on. The upload progress could continue on while the Velero server is being restarted. Like, for example, in EBS, we can't even stop it, I don't think. I mean, we could maybe delete the snapshot. But EBS is going to go ahead and keep working no matter what we do.
Yeah, and I would hope we design this, since it's a new component, I would hope we can design this in such a way that it's not directly linked to the Velero pod. Like,
that's phase 2. That would be the data mover, but yes. So like our existing stuff, like the vSphere plugin, the data movers they run in the background, and they respond to CRs for upload and download. And they have restart themselves. Like if we restart the whole cluster, they'll pick up again, at least they try to, and they may fail it.
Yeah, so you're right. That's really only, I guess that's really only, that part is really only right now is only for stuff like the vSphere plugin that doesn't rely on cloud APIs. Like it has to do some work itself. And this is just giving us a channel to know where it's at.
Yes, well, and we can also monitor the EBS uploading. So what we should be able to do is when we do a restart, we should be able to say, okay, I think we're going to have like our logs are going to be stored off somewhere, I hope. So we'll have to look a little bit at restart, but restart should enable us to, I think if we're in the middle of a backup and we restart, we simply say, we failed. But if we're in these phases where something could be going in the background, we're going to expect the background tasks to pick up and mark their own success or failure, but then we should be able to, watch them. So we'll want to clean up our restart logic as part of this project.
Some comments. I think having that indication of uploaded, partially uploading failure, or uploading partially failure is extremely useful, because from there, the questions that I ask are different, are much narrower if I'm at that phase, like at that point of the process. So that for me I think it's extremely useful. When I look at this diagram, and by the way, thank you, because this makes everything so much easier to understand. Do have a request that if this diagram needs correction, that
We'll correct it. Yes, this should also become part of our main documentation.
I just like prioritize that because it's so extremely helpful for at least I think for everybody who's very visual. I am like that. Anyway, when I look at this, I wonder if is it possible that we are conflating two things?
Okay.
That is, so this is a question. The state of the backup at any given moment with the reason for a change of state. So for example, maybe the states would be new, in progress, partially failed and failed, or partially failed complete. And then if we say partially in progress, we can say it's uploading. It's in progress. In what operations going on? It's uploading. So and then maybe we can simplify the transitions. And if it's partially failed, then we can say it's partially failed because failed on upload, like, or some other reason. You know what I mean? Is it possible that we are conflating these two things? Is there an opportunity to make this simpler?
Well, I think we could simplify this state diagram if we added like a separate, current state or current operation, perhaps. I'm not sure we gain a lot by that. We'd have to add a new field. Let's see. So if we added a new field in the CR, so I think we do need to keep track of this.
I think adding this new field that I think the new field you have in mind is the same new field that I have in mind. I don't know what it would be called, but it's something that will have to be updated. Like, and maybe this is the phase 2 you were talking about. For example, if a snapshot is being uploaded and the backup is complete, but but the snapshot is still going on, is there a way for us to like make a call to that API, find out, oh, that is like continuously find out it's done, and then come back and say, no, now it's done. It's ready.
Yes, so that's part of the design.
Okay, so I think we should have that. Maybe needs to be a new field that keeps track of what's going on.
Okay, we can think about that. Let me think that through. I want to make sure that, so field.
We talked before about a field where in the case that we couldn't upload the logs, we basically have no information. So having a field that would say, hey, it's partially failed or failed because we couldn't upload logs, which is separate from this upload. This is a snapshot upload. But still having that description field would be helpful. But I'm specifically thinking about the case where we couldn't upload logs for a backup because something happened and there's really no way to tell that right now. But I don't know how related it is to this. It could,
Yeah,
I guess it could be used in both cases.
Yeah, I would put that as a separate thing because it would be nice to have failure cases that right now, I ran into this the other day where something failed on closing, on uploading the last stuff. And the backup smart this failed, but you have no idea why.
Yeah, so I think that might be tangential to this this particular design, but I think that sort of field would be useful.
Okay, so I'll consider the field for the uploading state and think that through.
I think would be useful if, and I am volunteering to hash this out with you. I'd be glad to. This is very interesting. Very, very interesting problem to solve, and it's going. I think it's also very, very beneficial. Anyway, I think it would be interesting to maybe open a spreadsheet and just list, like, with this design. I know, I love spreadsheets or whatever. With this design, these are the use cases, and then like just put the phases as columns, for example, and then what happens and where can things go next. And if we modify this design,
the state, that's what the arrows are.
I know, but before we get to draw the diagram, okay, we have the idea, we have this diagram, so let's work with it. Let's walk through like different, like happy path, in use cases that touch that ends in every end point. I think it's going to be helpful if we do that. You know what I mean? Like have at least one use case that ends with every endpoint here that we are looking at.
So you're proposing that we take some of the paths that might follow through this graph and kind of associate it with like an actual explicit use case of what happened. So it's like there was a successful, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we can say, okay, so what if we tweak here? Let's have a separate model that's, like I'm saying, maybe we are conflating states with operation or operation status. Let's look how what that would look like. I don't know if you. I think it's a worthwhile exercise to like really look at concrete examples.
Would you volunteer to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to take over, but I volunteer. Like I'm thinking about this right now in my mind. I can do it.
Well, certainly, going through and getting the general progress. I mean, I built this diagram based on my understanding of the code. Mm-hmm. So having a more formal forward-driven thing would be good.
So this this is not like what I'm thinking is like a brainstorming exercise. It's not to formalize this in a spreadsheet. It's just to walk through, like, because I can't hold all the cases in my head at the same time for one model and then like another, what about the other? I get lost. I particularly would get lost. So I'm thinking it will be easier to communicate. It will be easier to see the trade-offs. So do you want me to do that? I can do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good thing to do. I don't think it changes. It doesn't change much of the way of operations, right? So we still have this state. And so I think it's really good to go through and make sure that our existing state transitions are sensible. So I added, I added these two, but the rest are what I believe is currently there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm on the same page with that. It doesn't change anything as far as like all the steps that need to happen. It's just like how we aggregate and communicate.
Yeah, and having the listing is like, here's what we expect a normal backup to do. It's going to start in this phase. it does this, then it does this, then it
Yeah.
does this. I think that's helpful. Because this diagram doesn't explain, for example, that, you don't go to in progress until we actually start working on the backup. It just says that you go from new to in progress.
Yeah, that's one of my question I have in mind too, that when we transition from in progress to upload, for example, then in the backup workflow, what operation can be done at that point? For example, if there is no useful to have another, even though, I know that when you start to switching into uploading, that means the snapshot had been created and I start able to using the snapshot like a read only or something like that. Then after I finish uploading, then I can do something else. For example, I'm just throwing out that for example, if I already I'm even at state of uploading, I can read it, but I cannot, do anything else with it. When I actually completely, then I can do a lot of stuff like cloning and so on and so forth. So it only makes sense if a different state can be useful for something. If it's not useful for something, then just keep them as like just saying in progress until it's completely done. That would be
Yes, I love what you said, Fong, because that's I was not articulating that, but that's whenever I think about this area of the code of the system, that's what I want to know. Is this useful? Is this partially useful? Can I do anything with it, or like it's really a problem? So what the states can we have that will be clear, like clear cut, completely useful? Go for it, like the complete state, right? Or like upload the failure. I don't know. I think we can do this better to really signal it's useful under certain conditions. You still need to look things up to make sure you fit you are under what condition the backup is, but it's going to be useful under certain conditions. So you can do something with that backup. And then there are other cases that it's just not useful at all. I just have to find out why it broke, fix it, but I need another backup.
I think that yes, that's a worthwhile exercise to do. What I would caution us from would be like increasing the number of states things can be in, which means there'll be like it'll be harder to implement, and there'll be more chances of bugs, like implementing a state machine diagram with like 10 states
Yes,
versus 100 states.
I
So
agree with you. I am actually thinking maybe we can cut the number of states from this diagram and just have states with a reason, and that combination will tell you this is useful, this is partially useful, this is useful, but at a later point in time. So yes, I agree.
I'm,
Yeah, I
I'm
think,
not sure how that reduces number of states, though.
it reduces the
That's
number
why
of visible phases.
maybe it wouldn't. That's why I want to put things on the spreadsheets, and then maybe my theory will be flawed, and I'll be like, yeah, that is not possible.
No, your theory is not flawed. It's just that, it's a matter of how do we represent the states.
Yeah.
So we're going to have the states. It's going to be these states exist no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a question of, do we represent this as a phase where we have because right now we have in progress, partially failed, completed.
Exactly.
Do we add new phases, or do we represent the state by adding another field that says what
Yes.
substate is in progress? So
another wrench I'll throw in here is a lot of other Kubernetes objects are using lists of conditions. So when you're creating a pod or a deployment, they say, okay, I'll add a condition that one pod came up, and I'll add another condition, another pod came up. So they don't just have one phase, they have a list that can be used. CRDs have this, pods and deployments have this. So it does make the logic a little weird, because like in Velero, we have to check on Velero install. We're like, has this deployment gone through these like 2-3 phases? Same with CRDs. We have to say, does it have these 2 or 3 conditions? But that's another format to consider.
Okay.
Okay, so this is good. So I'm going to take, so Fong's point I think is a really good one. And actually this requires some thinking because we have the possibility of being a usable snapshot before it's actually a durable backup. And that starts to get us into a tricky area. It's useful, but it's tricky because we get things like, I'm going to turn off this system. I mean, literally physically go turn the power off, and the guys are going to come and haul it away for e-waste. And if we mark completed because it's usable, but it's not durable, now you're in a bad situation. And in fact, it's even more in the cloud world, because if you simply delete all your resources, things could go bad. I think EBS snapshots are good, that they'll keep going in the background. But that I think is a good point, because it's actually useful to be able to note the difference between those two states. But we want to be able to communicate very clearly to the user, where are you at? Because sometimes people are doing a backup so that they can tear down the cluster, and they need to know that when it's safe to tear down the cluster.
Yeah. A second and last comment that I have is short comments. So you can move on. There is an issue that talks about this back when I think even Andy was on the project. I'm sure no one remembers. I unfortunately didn't look it up before this meeting, but it talks about a bunch of gotchas that because this has been a desirable behavior for a long time, but the challenge with do we upload, how do we, right now we have to, how do we decouple the uploading from the processing? That is an issue that talks about that and talks about a lot. Do you know, Dave, what issue I'm talking about?
No, I didn't see it, but
all right, I'll look for it, and I think it's worthwhile for us to look at it in the context of this exercise.
Yeah, it's probably worthwhile to go back and look through it. I mean, the reality is right now we do it. We simply don't track it.
Okay, I'll find it.
Yeah, I'm sure something like that exists, but there's a lot of old issues that we haven't swept out. So
yeah, no, there is one issue that people talk about a bunch of gotchas. I just want to make sure we read through it and we're not missing any gotcha.
Okay. Okay, so this is all this is actually the how do things move from here to there. So I think we've hashed through states enough at the moment. So the idea here is that we'll continue on with our existing behavior. So we'll go ahead and call all of our backup item actions and volume snapshots just the way we currently do. And they're going to return snapshot IDs just as they currently do. But then we'll be able to monitor these snapshot IDs with the plugins optionally. So let's see. So plugin needs to be able to provide status. We'll also need to be able to handle cancellation and deletion. So like if the backup gets deleted while it's in the uploading phase, we need to go through and whack all the snapshots as part of the deletion, and the plugins need to be able to either cancel the upload or delete the snapshot at the end or whatever. But they need to be responsible for actually cleaning things up. And then when all the snapshots, so we talked about the partially failed state, so that's this. And then if it goes to failed, the expectation is that we will stop or delete all of the snapshots that are associated with it. I'm not sure if that's the right thing. Maybe that should really be something that happens as part of the actual deletion. What do you think?
I think it would be surprising if
what do we currently do? Would we just leave them hanging around?
if you stop the backup while it's running?
Well, no, if it moves to failed state.
It just stays there.
Yeah,
We don't
they're
delete
just
anything.
hanging.
Maybe we can give the user configuration to say delete
Um,
unless
Or they
it
just
was
need to, or they
successful.
need to delete the failure. I think,
I believe if you delete a backup in failed state, it will go clean everything up. But like if it's in a failed state, it doesn't by default go clean up all the stuff that it made.
yeah, I think what I was thinking here was that we're using resources, even though it's in failed state, as it like spins through uploading. So we can, I think we'll change it back to remove it when we delete it. And then in the future, we could look at whether or not to halt things as it moves to failed.
Sorry,
How
so
do
just to
you-
clarify.
No,
Oh.
go ahead, Patricia. I'm sorry.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, no, I was just so there's a difference though between deleting the resources and stopping any further ones from being created, because if we've initiated the upload part, then maybe we don't necessarily need to continue with the upload, but you still want to keep the existing resources that have already been created.
That's where we get into this kind of weird in-between state, because like for example on EBS, I think the only way we could stop the upload would be by deleting the snapshot.
Yeah, so it might just end up being like provider specific.
Right, or like in vSphere, yeah, we need to delete the snapshot, and that could stop the upload, but you could have a usable snapshot even though it hasn't been uploaded. So I'm kind of in the mind that if something's marked failed, users should not expect any piece of it to be usable. And we shouldn't do any work to make sure any pieces are usable. We can also say that any cleanup will only happen when they actually delete the backup, but there's no guarantees on the state of anything within the backup.
Yeah, I think that's the approach that we are taking. If anything is failed, they're not usable, and we also don't clean up if something's failed.
You mean we don't clean up at the time we fail?
At the time you fail, yes.
Because I do still think if you remove that backup, we will go track down anything that is associated. But yeah.
Yeah, so for the moment, we'll just take that there may be CPU and IO resources that are being consumed, even though the backup has failed. We won't go to stop it.
Yeah, basically you may still have to pay for failed backups.
Yeah.
Is there something here around people wanting that information to figure out how and why a backup failed?
That's separate from this, but yes, we definitely need to improve that, because that's been like an issue.
Yeah, it's been an issue not only for users and customers, but like for our team. It's like getting good information to help troubleshoot can be involved. So yeah, it's things like this, things like adding a description field to failures. More information would be helpful for everybody, I think.
So we do have a list of errors, right, that we include that you can see with the describe.
No, we're
backup
talking about
fails?
that. I think we should add that.
Wait,
Describe will have some errors, but it's not complete.
Yeah, I mean, there's a point in time there where we go through and we mark the backup as failed, and we have all the errors in hand. They're all there in memory, but we don't actually like write them into the CR as these are the things that happened. So we were discussing that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they go into the log, don't they?
Well, and like so like the thing that drove me nuts was when I was working on the Azure testing, the Azure plugin would fail because we didn't allocate enough memory to the pod, but it only failed when we were actually uploading to the object store. So at that point, we had marked the backup as, well, we hadn't marked the backup as complete. We'd stopped logging, we'd closed the logs, and started to upload them to the object store, but then it failed. And so we marked it as failed, but there was nothing in the logs that indicated why it actually failed. And you had to go back and like dig through the pod logs to see that the server returned an error, and that was why it actually failed.
Right. So
Actually-
okay. So I'm talking about two different things. So that's the case where a description field would be useful, because we cannot make a log. Like we cannot upload it to object storage. So we should write that in a description field. There are errors when you do a backup or restore describe. So things like when you just describe or restore and say, it'll say we couldn't restore an object because one was already there. Those kinds of errors are there. But we're not, I think it's perhaps more accurate to say we don't report every kind of error there, just because we don't have the space.
No, we shouldn't. But anything that actually causes a failure should go in
Yes.
there if we can put it, or at
Yes.
least a subset of those. I mean, sometimes there's 1,000 things that, there are 1,000 fatal errors somehow, but I don't think that happens very often.
But I think this is where a description field or conditions would be very helpful. Specifically because we rely on the logs to be in object storage, but if you can't even get them to object storage, then you're left doing a bunch of digging.
Very side point, but is there any way that we could potentially change how the logs are kind of currently managed so that you essentially have like two writers for the logs? So one that can be streamed during the backup that's in progress, and then one that eventually gets written to object storage. I'm just thinking about like another project that I'd worked on in the past where like we had this kind of idea of like a log streamer, so that like you have the logs being written to something and then they can, it's essentially like a T writer, so they can send off in different locations.
I mean, they are written to the local disk at the moment.
I think I'd be interested if like some of these steps could be published as events during the backup.
Yeah.
Like we could see that I attempted to upload the backup logs and then it failed. Like failed to upload backup logs, retrying, and then maybe you retry it a couple of times. But like you could do, I think it would be interesting is if I could just like kubectl describe the backup and kind of watch what it's doing instead of having to wait for it to move to a failed or completed state to then look at the logs, right? Like seeing what's it's currently doing, I think would help both determining these failures as well as like making the descriptions easier to state, right? Because like you could say like a higher level description without having to get super specific. But if you have the events, you might be able to actually see like where it kind of failed, I guess is what I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody but me. Sorry.
So Nolan had raised the idea of using a conditions list, like some of the other things are doing, that might fit into this. What do you think?
Well, so I think what Sean's referring to is the Kubernetes event structure, which is also used by pods and everything. So I actually looked into this last year, maybe late 2019, but we didn't go forward with it. But I think it's a valid idea. The events in Kubernetes are meant to be transient, so it would be useful for watching a backup or restore live, but I think we would still need the logs for historical. But I'm very much in agreement that we should explore it.
We had this conversation, and then the thing that stuck out in my mind is that they are transient. They're not going to be around. Are there tools that people use to capture those and persist those?
They usually stick around for at least a couple hours, from my understanding.
Yes, but
so
I don't know,
you could
I have
certainly
a sense
just
that
log
people
the events.
Backups, people automate backups, so it's not something they want to be looking at. If I have one cluster and I'm running one backup once in a while, I'm going to look at it. But for like real admins who are running multiple clusters, they automating everything. I don't know if that's.
Well, that's why you make the log too. So I think we would combine that with like Bridget's T kind of idea, that we do both. I don't think we could rely solely on the Kubernetes events, and I don't want to capture them because that's an anti-pattern with what everybody else does. But if we log as well, I think we get both things.
So looking back at our history in the logs, right? So right now you can't get the logs until the backup completes.
Right.
And I think that's kind of an artifact that when we actually do get the logs, what we do is we return an S3 URL to download them directly to the client. And there was an ask that we change that around so that you would not get an S3 URL, but you'd get something back from the server.
Right.
And once we've done that, we actually have the logs locally anyhow. So I think one of the reasons why we can't get logs right now is just that there's no mechanism for streaming the logs from the server to the client.
Yeah, and like this goes back to the constraints under which Velero has been designed so far. Like we could do all this. We could put a little web server that fronts it or however. I think to accomplish that, we would need to have a Velero service that people would have to plumb through. Because right now, a good thing about Velero is you just submit stuff to the Kubernetes API server. There's nothing special. You don't have to set up any routes or anything.
There's no ingress.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is nice from our perspective. We don't have to worry about networking, but it also, in situations like this, we have to do some hacky workarounds. So I would love to hear ideas on how we make that easier. Because I know it was a design philosophy at the beginning to just not require people to do all that ingress service, all that stuff, but it's probably worth revisiting that.
Yeah, I don't put up a whole can of worms. It's also like, the opposite argument is what we're getting, some smaller is like, hey, I may not have access to that object store that we're actually writing into from my desktop. I do have access to the cluster, but the object store itself is firewalled off for me for whatever reason.
Yeah, we try to use the public URL thing for that, but that's not foolproof. That's
right. I mean, for on-prem store, there's no guarantees.
Yes. We had the recent requests about proxies. There's no guarantee that we could get it, that we're not going to be banned in the middle. So yeah, I could see an argument for saying Velero needs an ingress and a service that we can hit. I think that's a big design change, but it enables some other use cases.
Okay, well, moving right along, because this is really good, but it's a little off. So the idea here, let's see. So there's one kind of really major change that happens in the way that we interact with the object store, and that is that we might upload a bunch of stuff to the object store. So we would put in like the tarball, the log files potentially. We should probably put those up afterwards, but we wouldn't actually write the backup resource itself until we've gone to a final phase. And the reason for that is that way we can prevent like different Veleros looking at the backup storage location from like fighting with each other, because we put things up there that are not in the completed or not in the final phase. The reconcile should pull them down, and then the local, the other server would start looking at this resource and go, oh, I should be checking to see the upload progress. So that's kind of a pretty major change here that we may want to think through some more. But so the idea here is that after we've taken all of our snapshots, after we've uploaded the Kubernetes metadata, that when we're in one of these uploading phases, we then go back and pull the plugins on all of their snapshot IDs that we have. And if they all say we're done, then we're done and we move forward. If they don't say they're done, we just continue polling. And we can just keep this in memory, because on a restart, we just pull everybody once. So they all need to be able to keep their state after they've said completed. They need to retain that state. But then, yeah, once we could just pull them all again, and they should come back, and if they all stay completed, then we're done. If not, we have our in-memory list of what is completed, and we just pull then on the things that are not done yet. So the idea here is that we'll change or add some things to the plugin APIs. So we have a upload progress structure that we can ask them for. And this will just return, it has a flag to say whether or not things are completed. There's an error to say, if there was an error that happened. And then we have this items completed, items to complete. This could be bytes, this could be objects, it's whatever it is. It's just there to kind of give us some progress. So then in the volume snapshotter, we would add this upload progress call to the volume snapshotter plugins. And we would call it saying, hey, here's a snapshot, give me the progress for this upload. And then it could return the upload progress structure. Similarly for the backup items, but we chatted about this a bit of whether we add this to backup item action as a new method or whether we introduce a new plugin. And the current model we've been doing is we've actually been adding new plugins. So we have like delete item action is a separate plugin from backup item action. So this is kind of following this same model where we have a backup item progress. But I think I could go either way, but I was just, I think Nolan and I bounced this around a little bit, and it's like, hey, let's just keep it parallel to the existing plugin structure.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome to converge these, but I kind of want to get the plugin versioning API stuff done before we do that.
Yeah, and we may want to, so right now we're kind of in this weird state because of CSI and the vSphere plugin, where we have a bunch of stuff under volume snapshotter, and we have a couple things under backup item. And I think where we want to go is we want to have like an object snapshotter that merges the stuff for volume snapshot and backup, the backup item action snapshotters that are currently out there. And we go back to having backup item action being for basically internal things, munging records and twiddling bits, and have snapshotting be explicitly snapshotting and not just, oh, by the way, our backup item action happened to do a snapshot. And then we can go back to tracking all of our snapshots. Like right now we had the volume snapshots file that's part of the backup, but that doesn't get updated properly for backup item actions that start doing snapshots. So that'd be that's the current idea.
Yeah, implementing as methods in the backup item action is more intuitive, in my opinion, instead of adding yet another plugin.
Yeah, except that then delete's kind of out on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I think the hurdle we have right now is we don't have good versioning. So like if we just add these, it breaks all the stuff that implements the current interface, but not the new one.
Yeah.
I think at some point we have to rationalize the backup item action APIs somehow, because there's basically at this point, either way looks weird. So if we add the progress to backup item action, then why is delete item action hanging out by itself? And actually, why is restore item action separate? But there's good reasons for that. If we put it as its own plugin, it's like, well, why did you guys add another plugin? So I don't think there's a way for this to look good yet. We're gonna have to go through and rationalize the APIs.
I think we should just rationalize the versioning of the plugin gRPCs before we get this going, or we could go down the route of where we change the restore item action plugin, where we introduce the waiting function we could go down that route for implementation also, which we did not require, like, which was not like a breaking API change.
Actually, Scott has revised that design, and it will be a breaking API change. So
Oh,
I've asked him to. I know, Fong, you're interested in this, and I think Scott is too. Like, we will need help to get the plugin versioning API out early in the 1.7 release.
okay.
Yeah, Scott was actually implementing his old design, and he's like, "Oh, this won't work." So,
Okay. I did not see that.
yeah, it's posted on the core repo. But before he proposed that, he pinged me and was like, "What should I do to reconcile this?" And I told him update the design. But yeah, as 1.7, I think one of the very first things we'll have to do is make sure we get the plugin versioning rationalized.
Yeah, I'm interested in that because my context, I want to add the context into that to have a plugin timeout. But yeah, with the versioning, it would be great. So we know which the implementer can know which one to use and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 3 big things that are stacked up behind it now.
Yes, so that's good. So which way we actually implement the APIs, I'm willing to go either way. Does anybody see any issue with the basic algorithm where we snapshot everything and then we're polling in the background into the plugins and, timeouts or, polling intervals and so forth?
So I'm not. So for example, like EBS snapshots, there is no polling, right? It's like almost instantaneous.
No, because the EBS snapshot isn't actually usable immediately.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is equivalent to the CSI field of ready to use.
Got it. Okay.
So it could
It's
be
just that
could
we
be
don't. It's just that we don't have visibility into the ready to use straight away.
we do. I mean, we can check the field in CSI, right?
We can check the field in CSI, and we can also do whatever the CSI driver does to set that field for the time being.
For the AWS plugin.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Well,
okay.
Wait, so for the AWS plugin, so if we take the current volume snapshotter,
yes,
we would just go ahead and implement upload progress.
Right, which is checking the exact same data that ready to use field would be in the driver.
Yes.
But if you're doing the CSI version, you just check the ready to use flag.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But in either case, that info should be available for us. And if it's not, I mean, then the plugin says, yes, I'm done.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure if the AWS driver is implementing CSI snapshotting. I don't know if that changed. I haven't seen that.
Our AWS plugin?
No, the AWS driver, AWS CSI driver.
Yes, it is, because some people are using that because there's some issues.
They've made a bunch of progress.
Anyway, we're almost at time. So there's no changes. I don't believe there's any actual changes in the Velero backup format itself, except for adding the new phase and putting off when we upload the backup record. A little discussion here on what things would do. Pretty much we talked about the backup workflow, and then on restart we discussed that a little bit, that we would go ahead and look for backup resources that are in uploading. Oops, how did I write uploading?
Yeah. I have one final question. Have you checked base with Xing on this to see that this will fit in, or if she has any comments?
With the vSphere plugin, it pretty much fits into what we already have in there. So no, but yeah, I mean, it already knows all of this stuff, and in fact, we had all of this stuff available. We'd want to add this into the Astrolabe APIs probably, and then just expose it out. Okay, so I think so our follow-ups on this. So we need to follow up on like this event state versus fields, and really it sounds like there's a larger discussion there as well. and we can discuss the exact, we can noodle around on the exact implementation of the APIs. Any other major things people want to follow up on in the future?
I think we need to get a plugin versioning design doc rolling.
Yeah. That yeah.
It's not this, but it is a this depends on that. So
Yep. Yes, we need to get that rolling. Okay, sounds good. Thank you, everybody.